The stars shimmered like diamonds scattered across an endless black canvas. Captain Jeho adjusted his seat in the cockpit of the Aurora, a sleek exploration vessel that had been his home for the past 3 years. His hands rested lightly on the controls, fingers tapping out a rhythm born of habit rather than necessity. The ship hummed softly around him, its systems running smoothly as it drifted through the quiet expanse of space. Behind him, Yoon-suk sat at the navigation console, poring over star charts displayed on a glowing screen. His brow furrowed in concentration as he traced possible routes with a stylus. To his left, June monitored communications equipment, her earpiece picking up faint static from distant signals. Hyunwoo, the engineer, was tucked away in the engine room below, ensuring the ship's delicate machinery remained in peak condition. This mission was supposed to be routine, a simple mapping expedition into uncharted sectors of the galaxy. Humanity had expanded far beyond Earth, but vast regions of space still remained unknown. The crew of the Aurora had been tasked with charting these areas, gathering data that would help future missions navigate safely. It was tedious work, but someone had to do it. As they approached the edge of their designated sector, however, something unusual caught Yoon-suk's attention. On his screen, a faint line appeared, a boundary invisible to the naked eye but detectable by the ship's sensors. He frowned and leaned closer, adjusting the settings to enhance the image. "Captain," he said after a moment, his voice calm but tinged with curiosity, "there's something here." Jeho turned slightly, raising an eyebrow. "Something?" Yoon-suk nodded. "It looks like some kind of barrier. Energy readings are off the charts, but there's no physical object we can see." Ji-eun swiveled her chair to face them, removing her earpiece. "I'm picking up strange interference too," she added. "It's not natural. Whatever this is, it wasn't made by accident." Jeho stood up and moved to stand between them, studying the displays. The barrier stretched infinitely in both directions, cutting cleanly through the void. It pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly as if alive. Legend spoke of such boundaries, zones forbidden to all who dared approach. Some called it the Veil. Others whispered of curses and vanished civilizations. Most dismissed the tales as superstition, relics of a time when humanity knew less about the universe. But Jeho couldn't ignore what he saw now. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and unease. This was uncharted territory, not just physically, but historically. No human ship had ever crossed this threshold. What lay beyond? Danger? Discovery? Or something entirely unimaginable? "Do we report this?" Yoon-suk asked hesitantly. Reporting the discovery would mean waiting for orders, likely being told to turn back. Protocol demanded caution, especially in situations like this. Jeho hesitated. He thought of the countless hours spent staring into the emptiness of space, yearning for something more, something meaningful. Here was an opportunity, a chance to push the boundaries of human knowledge. How could he walk away? "No," he said finally, his voice firm. "We go forward." Yoon-suk blinked, startled. "Are you sure? We don't know what's out there." "That's exactly why we have to find out," Jeho replied. "If we wait for permission, we'll lose our chance. History isn't made by people who play it safe." June exchanged a glance with Yoon-suk, but didn't argue. She understood the weight of Jeho's decision. They were explorers, after all. Pushing limits was part of the job. Hyunwoo climbed up from the engine room moments later, wiping grease-streaked hands on a rag. "What's going on?" he asked, noticing the tense atmosphere. "We're crossing the barrier," Jeho explained simply. Hyunwoo froze, his eyes widening. "You mean the Veil? Are you serious?" "Yes," Jeho said, "and I need everyone focused. If anything goes wrong, we'll handle it together." Reluctantly, Hyunwoo nodded and returned to his station to prepare the engines. The rest of the crew settled into their roles, each silently grappling with the enormity of what they were about to do. As the Aurora drew closer to the barrier, the air aboard the ship grew heavy with anticipation. When they reached the edge, Jeho gave the command. "Engage thrusters." Slow and steady. The ship shuddered as it breached the barrier. For a brief moment, everything seemed normal. Then chaos erupted. Lights flickered wildly throughout the cabin. Instruments malfunctioned, spitting out erratic readings. A low, eerie hum filled the air, vibrating deep within their chests. June clutched her headset, wincing as distorted voices babbled incomprehensibly in her ears. Yoon-suk gripped the edges of his console as the navigation system spiraled out of control, displaying nonsensical coordinates. "What's happening?" Hyun-woo shouted from below. "I don't know." Jae-ho snapped, fighting to maintain control of the ship. "Just hold on." Time itself felt warped. Seconds stretched into minutes, then snapped back into fleeting instants. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting into shapes that looked almost human before dissolving into nothingness. Everyone aboard felt it, the sense that reality itself was unraveling around them. And then, as suddenly as it began, the chaos subsided. The lights stabilized. The humming ceased. The ship floated peacefully in a sea of unfamiliar stars. For a long moment, no one spoke. They stared at the view screen, taking in the alien constellation spread before them. These weren't the stars they'd mapped earlier. This wasn't any charted region of the galaxy. They had entered somewhere entirely new. "Where are we?" Yoon-suk murmured, breaking the silence. Jae-ho didn't answer. Instead, he activated the external sensors, scanning for signs of nearby planets or ships. Nothing registered. It was as though they existed in a bubble, cut off from the rest of the universe. "This doesn't make sense," Ji-yoon said, shaking her head. "Our comms aren't working either. I'm trying every frequency, but it's like we're not even here." Hyun-woo climbed back up, his face pale. "Guys, I think we got bigger problems," he said grimly. "Something's messing with the ship's core systems. Power levels are fluctuating unpredictably." Jae-ho clenched his jaw. Whatever this place was, it defied explanation. And yet, despite the danger, he felt a thrill coursing through him. They had done it. They had crossed the veil. Now came the hard part, surviving long enough to figure out why. The Aurora drifted silently through the strange new expanse of stars, its system still recovering from the chaos of crossing the veil. The crew moved cautiously, their earlier excitement replaced by a growing sense of unease. This place felt wrong, unnatural. Every action they took seemed to echo strangely, as if the universe itself were watching them. Jae-ho paced a narrow corridor connecting the cockpit to the living quarters, his boots making soft thuds against the metal floor. He paused occasionally to glance at the glowing panels lining the walls, searching for answers in their steady hum. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, something important. Yoon-suk sat hunched over his navigation console, staring blankly at the screens before him. The star charts flickered weakly, displaying clusters of constellations that didn't match anything in their database. Even worse, the ship's trajectory refused to align with any predictable path. No matter how many times he recalculated their course, the numbers came out scrambled, leading them in circles. "This doesn't make sense," Yoon-suk muttered under his breath, rubbing his temples. "It's like we're not moving at all." Hyun-woo emerged from the engine room, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. His face was streaked with grease, and his usually calm demeanor had given way to frustration. "I've checked everything twice," he said, throwing up his hands. "There's nothing physically wrong with the engines. They're running fine. But the power fluctuations? Those are real, and I can't explain them." Ji-yoon sat nearby, her earpiece dangling loosely around her neck. She hadn't spoken much since they crossed the veil, her focus consumed by the faint whispers she kept hearing through the ship's communication system. At first, she thought it was interference, random bursts of static caused by some unknown phenomenon. But the longer she listened, the clearer the voices became. They spoke in languages she didn't recognize, their tones shifting between urgency and despair. "Do you hear that?" Ji-yoon asked suddenly, looking up from her station. Her voice was quiet but sharp, cutting through the tense silence. The others turned to her, their expressions wary. "Hear what?" Jae-ho asked, stepping closer. She hesitated, unsure how to describe it. "Voices," she finally said. "They're faint, but they're there, like someone's trying to talk to us." Yoon-suk frowned. "From where?" "We haven't picked up any ships or signals." I don't know, June admitted, but they're getting louder. Before anyone could respond, Hyun-woo let out a startled yelp. All eyes snapped toward him as he pointed down the hallway behind them. Did you see that? He demanded, his voice rising an octave. There was someone walking down there. A person. Jae-ho exchanged a quick glance with Yoon-suk before moving swiftly toward the hallway. The corridor stretched empty before them, dimly lit by the overhead lights. Nothing stirred. No footsteps echoed. No shadow lingered. There's no one here, Jae-ho said after a moment, his tone firm but measured. He turned back to Hyun-woo. Are you sure you saw something? I'm telling you, I did. Hyun-woo insisted, his face flushed. It looked human. Well, kind of human, but then it just disappeared. Jae-ho sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He wanted to dismiss Hyun-woo's claim as stress-induced paranoia, but deep down, he couldn't ignore the possibility that something truly strange was happening aboard the Aurora. After all, none of this made sense. Not the malfunctioning systems, not the distorted voices, and certainly not the eerie sensation that they weren't alone. All right, Jae-ho said finally. We'll keep an eye out. For now, let's focus on figuring out where we are and how to stabilize the ship. But as the hours passed, the strange occurrences only grew more frequent. June began hearing fragments of words she could almost understand, snippets of conversations that faded before she could grasp their meaning. Yoon-suk swore he saw flashes of movement in the corners of his vision, though nothing appeared when he turned to look. Even Jae-ho wasn't immune. He caught glimpses of figures standing just beyond the edge of visibility, their forms dissolving into shadows whenever he approached. It wasn't until later that night, when most of the crew had retreated to their bunks, that things escalated further. Ji-yoon stayed awake in the cockpit, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. The whispers in her headset had grown louder, overlapping in a cacophony of voices that sent chills down her spine. She adjusted the frequency dials, hoping to filter out the noise, but instead, a single clear message broke through. Leave while you still can. Her blood ran cold. The voice was unmistakably human, or at least, it sounded close enough to pass for one. It carried a weight of warning, dripping with urgency. June tore off her earpiece and stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. What is it? Jae-ho's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, having heard the commotion from his quarters. June stammered, clutching the earpiece tightly in her hand. I think someone or something is trying to warn us. Jae-ho stepped closer, his expression serious. What did you hear? It said, leave while you still can, she replied softly. Like whatever's out here doesn't want us to stay. Jae-ho frowned, his mind racing. Was it possible they'd stumbled into territory claimed by another species? Or was this some kind of automated defense mechanism meant to scare intruders away? Either way, leaving wasn't an option, not yet. Not without understanding what they were dealing with. We'll investigate tomorrow. Jae-ho decided. For now, try to get some rest. Reluctantly, Ji-yoon nodded and followed him out of the cockpit. As she lay in her bunk, however, sleep eluded her. The whispers continued, faint but persistent, haunting her thoughts long after she closed her eyes. The next morning brought no relief. If anything, the atmosphere aboard the Aurora grew heavier, suffocating. Breakfast was a silent affair, each crew member lost in their own thoughts. When Yoon-suk finally broke the silence, his voice was hesitant. I've been thinking, he began, glancing around the table. What if we're not really here? Everyone froze, staring at him. What do you mean? Hyun-woo asked cautiously. Yoon-suk shrugged, struggling to articulate his theory. Think about it. Our systems are malfunctioning. We can't communicate with anyone outside. Even our navigation logs show we're going in circles. What if crossing the veil erased us? Like we exist, but no one else knows we're here. The idea sent a chill through the group. None of them had considered such a possibility. But it fit disturbingly well with everything they'd experienced so far. That would explain why we haven't seen any other ships, June murmured. Or planets. Or anything, really. But it does explain the voices, Hyun-woo countered. Or the whatever it was I saw in the hallway. No, Jae-ho agreed, leaning forward. Which means there's more to this than just being forgotten. Something or someone is here with us. As if on cue, the ship shuddered violently, throwing everyone off balance. Alarms blared, and red warning lights flashed throughout the cabin. Instinctively, the crew scrambled to their stations, hearts pounding. What's happening now? June shouted over the din. The energy readings are spiking again. Yoon Suk called back, frantically typing commands into his console. It's coming from outside. On the view screen, a massive shape materialized out of the darkness. A colossal alien construct drifting ominously toward them. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the light of distant stars in mesmerizing patterns. Strange symbols etched across its exterior pulsed rhythmically, casting an ethereal glow that filled the cockpit. "It looks alive," Hyunwoo whispered, his voice trembling. Jae-ho gripped the armrest of his seat, his jaw tightening. Whatever this thing was, it radiated power and intent. As it drew nearer, the humming sound returned, resonating deep within their chests. It wasn't hostile exactly, but wasn't friendly either. It felt ancient. "Should we run?" Yoon Suk asked, his fingers hovering uncertainly over controls. "No," Jae-ho said firmly. "We came here to explore. Let's see what this thing wants." The construct slowed as it reached the Aurora, hovering silently mere meters away. Then, without warning, a section of its surface shifted, revealing a dark opening large enough to accommodate the ship. A low hum emanated from within, beckoning them closer. "Well," Jae-ho said dryly, breaking the stunned silence. "Guess we're going inside." The opening in the alien construct loomed before them, its edges shimmering like molten silver. The hum emanating from within grew louder, vibrating to the hull of the Aurora and making the crew's teeth chatter. Despite their fear, there was no turning back now. Whatever this thing wanted, it had made its intentions clear. It wasn't going to let them leave without an answer. Jae-ho stood at the helm, his hands gripping the controls tightly as he guided the ship into massive structure. The interior revealed itself slowly, a labyrinth of sleek corridors bathed in soft, pulsating light. The walls seemed alive, shifting subtly as if breathing. Strange symbols glowed along the surfaces, rearranging themselves in patterns too complex for the human mind to decipher. "This place," June murmured, her voice barely audible over the hum. "It feels conscious." No one replied. They were too busy staring wide-eyed at their surroundings. Even Hyunwoo, usually quick with sarcastic remark, remained silent, his face pale as he stared out the cockpit window. "We need to investigate," Jae-ho said finally, breaking the spell. "But we stick together. No one goes off alone." He turned to his crew. "Yoon Suk, you're with me. Jiun, monitor communications from here. If anything happens, you pull us out immediately. Hyunwoo, stay on the ship and keep an eye on the systems." "Got it." They nodded, though none of them looked particularly reassured. Grabbing flashlights and emergency kits, Jae-ho and Yoon Suk stepped cautiously onto the alien floor. The moment their boots touched down, the air changed, denser, heavier, charged with energy that prickled against their skin. The corridor stretched endlessly ahead, curving slightly out of sight. As they walked, the glowing symbols followed them, shifting faster now, almost as if reacting to their presence. Jae-ho kept his flashlight trained on the path ahead, but its beam did little to penetrate the dimness. It felt like the darkness was swallowing the light whole. "Do you feel that?" Yoon Suk asked suddenly, stopping mid-step. His voice was low, tense. "Feel what?" Jae-ho replied, turning to look at him. "It's hard to explain." Yoon Suk hesitated, glancing around nervously, like something's watching us. "Not just here," he gestured vaguely at the walls, "but inside my head." Jae-ho frowned but didn't respond. He'd felt it too, a strange pressure behind his eyes, like whispers trying to break through his thoughts. Shaking it off, he motioned for Yoon Suk to keep moving. As they ventured deeper, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. In the center stood several humanoid figures cloaked in flowing robes that shimmered like starlight. Their faces were obscured, hidden beneath hoods that cast deep shadows. Each figure radiated an aura of calm authority, Yet there was an undeniable edge of menace to their presence. For a long moment, neither side moved. Then one of the figures raised a hand, palm facing outward. A wave of warmth washed over Jeho and Yoon-suk, calming their racing hearts and easing the tension in their muscles. Without speaking, the figure communicated directly into their minds. "You have entered forbidden space," the voice echoed, deep and resonant. It wasn't heard with ears, but felt within their very souls. "You are not meant to be here." Jeho swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak despite the overwhelming sense of insignificance pressing down on him. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. "We are the keepers of memory," came the reply. "Guardians of this realm. This is a place where time ceases to exist, where forgotten civilizations linger in eternal stasis. Your kind has never been allowed beyond the veil." Yoon-suk glanced at Joe, his expression a mixture of awe and dread. "What happens to those who enter?" he asked hesitantly. "They become part of the void," the keeper answered simply. "Erased from existence, their memories absorbed into the fabric of this dimension. To cross the veil is to risk annihilation." Jeho took a step forward, his courage outweighing his fear. "Why do you guard this place? What purpose does it serve?" The keeper paused, as if considering whether to answer. Finally, it spoke again. "This zone exists outside your understanding of reality. It is both sanctuary and prison, a buffer between dimensions. Here lie the echoes of those who sought immortality or ultimate power, only to destroy themselves in the process. We maintain balance, ensuring such knowledge does not corrupt younger species." Jeho processed this information, his mind racing. Humanity had stumbled blindly into danger, unaware of the stakes. But perhaps there was still hope. "We didn't come seeking destruction," he said carefully. "We came to explore, to learn. Surely that counts for something." The keeper tilted its head slightly, studying him intently. "Perhaps," it conceded, "but intent alone is not enough. You must prove yourselves worthy of existing beyond the veil." "How?" Jeho pressed. "What must we do?" In response, the keeper gestured toward another doorway at the far end of the chamber. Beyond it lay a swirling portal of light and shadow, pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. "Pass through the trial of reflections," the keeper instructed. "Face the truths you carry within. Only then will we decide your fate." Jeho nodded grimly. There was no other choice. Turning to Yoon-suk, he gave a small nod of encouragement. Together, they approached the portal, stepping through its shimmering surface. On the other side, reality fractured. The world around them dissolved into fragments of memory, vivid and tangible. For Jeho, he found himself standing in the small apartment where he'd grown up, surrounded by the scent of his mother's cooking. She stood at the stove, humming softly, while a younger version of himself played with a toy spaceship on the floor. "Mom," he whispered, reaching out instinctively. But when she turned to look at him, her face was blank, devoid of recognition. She couldn't see him. Pain surged in his chest as he realized this wasn't real. It was a reflection of his own guilt. Years ago, he'd left Earth to pursue his dreams among the stars, leaving his family behind. He'd told himself it was for the greater good, but deep down, he knew he'd been running away from responsibility, from connection, from love. Now, faced with the truth, he couldn't deny it any longer. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I should have stayed. I should have tried harder." The scene shifted abruptly, pulling him into another memory. This time, he was aboard a different ship years earlier. An accident during a routine mission had cost the lives of 2 crew members. He'd blamed himself ever since, carrying the weight of their deaths like a stone tied to his soul. "You can't change the past," a voice said gently, startling him. It was his own voice, older and wiser. "But you can honor it, learn from it, move forward." Jeho nodded, taking a shaky breath. Slowly, the memories began to fade, replaced by clarity. He understood now. The trial wasn't about punishment. It was about growth, about facing the parts of himself he'd buried and emerging stronger for it. When he returned to the chamber, Yoon-suk was already waiting, his expression haunted but resolute. "I saw things," he admitted quietly. "Things I wish I could forget. but I think I needed to see them. Jae-ho placed a hand on his shoulder. Me too. Moments later, June joined them, her eyes red-rimmed but determined. It wasn't easy, she said, her voice trembling. But I think I know myself better now. Together, they faced the keepers once more. The robed figures regarded them silently before nodding slowly. You have endured the trial, one of them said, and in doing so, you have shown potential. However, humanity as a whole remains unworthy of inclusion in cosmic consciousness. Leave this place and do not return. Before anyone could protest, the chamber began to dissolve around them, pulling them back toward the Aurora. As they re-entered the ship, the alien construct closed behind them, vanishing into the void. For a long moment, no one spoke. They sat in silence, grappling with what they'd experienced. Whatever lay beyond the veil, it was far greater than they could comprehend. And though they'd survived, for now, they knew their journey was far from over. The Aurora drifted silently once more, its engines humming softly as it moved away from the alien construct. The crew sat in the cockpit, their faces pale and drawn, each lost in their own thoughts. The weight of what they had just experienced pressed heavily on them, like an invisible force pinning them to their seats. No one spoke for a long time, the silence broken only by the faint beeping of instruments and the occasional creak of the ship's metal frame. Jae-ho finally broke the quiet. "We made it," he said, his voice low but steady. It wasn't a question. It was a statement meant to ground them all back in reality. "We survived." "Barely," Hyun-woo muttered, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. His usual sarcasm was tinged with unease. "I still don't understand what happened in there. Was that real, or were we hallucinating?" "It was real," June replied firmly, her eyes fixed on the view screen. She had been the last to return from the trial of reflections, and the memories of her experience lingered vividly in her mind. Those keepers, they're not just machines or illusions. They're something else, something ancient. Yoon-suk nodded slowly, rubbing his temples. They showed us things about ourselves, things we didn't want to see. But I think they also gave us a chance to grow, to change. Jae-ho glanced at his crew, noting the mix of exhaustion and determination on their faces. Despite everything they'd been through, they hadn't fallen apart. If anything, they seemed stronger now, more united. That gave him hope. "Whatever they are, they let us go," he said. "That means we did something right. Now it's up to us to prove we deserve this second chance." Hyun-woo snorted. "Second chance? We almost got erased from existence. How is that a win?" "It's a win because we're still here." Jae-ho shot back, his tone sharp but not unkind. "And because we have a choice, to turn back or keep going. What do you think we should do?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Each of them knew the risks of continuing deeper into the Forbidden Zone. The Keepers had warned them explicitly. Humanity wasn't ready for what lay beyond. But curiosity burned fiercely within them, especially Jae-ho. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to discover, secrets that could shape the future of their species. "I say we press on," Yoon-suk said after a moment, surprising everyone. "If we leave now, we'll never know what's out there. And if we tell Earth about this place, who knows what kind of chaos that would cause. Maybe some secrets are better left hidden until we're ready." June hesitated before nodding. "I agree. Whatever's in this zone, it's dangerous. But it's also important. If we can learn how to navigate it safely, maybe we can help humanity avoid making the same mistakes those other civilizations did." Hyun-woo threw up his hands in exasperation. "You're both crazy. Did you forget the part where we almost got erased? Where we saw literal ghosts of dead civilizations? This isn't a game." "No, it's not," Jae-ho said calmly. "But running away won't solve anything. We came here to explore, remember? To push boundaries. That's why we're out here, to find answers, not to play it safe." Hyun-woo opened his mouth to argue further, but stopped himself. He looked around at his crewmates, seeing the resolve in their eyes. Sighing deeply, he leaned forward and rested his elbows on his knees. "Fine, but if we die, I'm blaming all of you." A small smile flickered across Jae-ho's face. "Noted. With the decision made, they turned their attention back to navigating the strange expanse of stars. The keepers had granted them temporary amnesty, but they knew better than to assume they were completely safe. Every move they made had to be deliberate. Every action weighed carefully against the unknown dangers lurking around them. As they ventured deeper into Forbidden Zone, the landscape began to shift subtly. The stars outside the view screen grew dimmer, replaced by faint glowing shapes that floated aimlessly in the void. These shapes weren't natural. They pulsed with energy, shifting colors like living organisms. Some resembled buildings frozen mid-collapse, while others took the form of ships suspended in mid-battle, weapons firing endlessly into empty space. "What are those?" June whispered, her voice filled with awe and dread. "Echoes," Jeho replied quietly. "The Keeper said this place holds the memories of forgotten civilizations. I think these are remnants, pieces of history trapped forever." Yoon-suk zoomed in on one of the glowing forms, a massive structure that looked like a city skyline. As they approached, details became clearer. Towering skyscrapers crumbling under unseen forces, streets filled with shadowy figures frozen in motion. It was hauntingly beautiful, like a snapshot of a world long gone. "We need to document this," Jeho said, standing up. "Grab your scanners. Let's see if we can interact with these echoes." The crew suited up and stepped outside the Aurora, tethering themselves to the ship as they floated toward the nearest structure. Up close, the echoes felt surreal, solid yet intangible, like holograms projected onto the fabric of reality. Yoon-suk reached out tentatively, his gloved hand passing to the image of a crumbling building. For a brief moment, he felt a rush of sensations, sounds, smells, emotions, all jumbled together in a chaotic blur. "This is incredible," he murmured, pulling his hand back. "It's like we're touching their memories." Ji-yoon focused her scanner on the shadowy figures moving through the streets. Her device picked up fragments of data, snippets of conversations, flashes of images, even pieces of written text in languages they didn't recognize. Slowly, painstakingly, she pieced together bits of information. "These people tried to defy nature," she said after a while, her voice trembling with excitement. "They wanted immortality, power beyond comprehension. But instead of achieving it, they destroyed themselves. Their civilizations collapsed, and their memories ended up here." Hyun-woo floated nearby, watching silently as Ji-yoon worked. Despite his earlier protests, even he couldn't deny the significance of what they were uncovering. This wasn't just history, it was a warning, a cautionary tale etched into the very fabric of the universe. Back aboard the Aurora, they compiled their findings, piecing together a narrative that painted a grim picture of hubris and downfall. Civilizations far older and more advanced than humanity had risen and fallen countless times, each leaving behind echoes of their mistakes. The Forbidden Zone was both a graveyard and a library, preserving the lessons of those who had come before. But as they delved deeper, they noticed something unsettling. The echoes weren't static. They responded to their presence. Shadows turned to watch them. Buildings shifted slightly, as if aware of their proximity. Even the glowing symbols etched into the alien constructs seemed to pulse faster whenever they drew near. "We're being watched," Yoon-suk said one night, staring at the view screen. "I don't think we're alone anymore." Jeho frowned, studying the swirling patterns outside. "The Keepers must know we're still here. They gave us permission to leave, but we stayed. That might count as breaking their rules." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red warning lights flashed as the sensors detected movement. Something large and unknown approaching fast. On the view screen, a crystalline entity materialized out of the darkness. It was unlike anything they'd seen before, its surface refracting light into dazzling rainbows. Yet beneath its beauty lay an undeniable menace, a cold intelligence that sent shivers down their spines. "What is that thing?" Hyun-woo demanded, scrambling to a station. "I don't know," Jeho replied, gripping the controls tightly. "But I don't think it's friendly." The entity stopped just meters away from the Aurora, hovering silently. Then, without warning, it emitted a burst of energy that enveloped the ship. The crew cried out as visions flooded their minds, images of two possible futures. In one, humanity embraced unity and ascended alongside other enlightened species, forging a new era of peace and prosperity. In the other, greed and arrogance led to destruction, mirroring the fates of civilizations trapped in the Forbidden Zone. When the visions faded, the entity vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving the crew shaken but alive. Well, Jeho said finally, breaking the stunned silence. That was enlightening. No one laughed. They all knew what the vision meant. Humanity stood at a crossroads, and the choices they made would determine whether they joined the ranks of the forgotten or rose above them. The crystalline entity's sudden disappearance left the crew of the Aurora in stunned silence. The visions had shown them lingered vividly in their minds, replaying over and over like a broken recording. Two futures, one hopeful, one bleak, each demanding attention, each pulling at their thoughts with equal weight. For a long moment, no one moved or spoke. The ship drifted quietly through Forbidden Zone, surrounded by the eerie echoes of forgotten civilizations. Finally, Jeho broke the silence. "We need to talk about what we just saw," he said, his voice low but steady. He turned to face his crew, meeting their eyes one by one. Those visions, they weren't random. They were warnings and choices. Yoon Suk nodded slowly, still gripping the edge of his console, as if to steady himself. "It showed us what could happen to humanity," he murmured. "If we're careful, if we learn from the mistakes of others, maybe we can avoid their fate. But if we don't, then we'll end up like them." June finished for him, her tone heavy with dread. She gestured toward the view screen, where the glowing remnants of ancient worlds floated silently in the void, trapped here forever. "Forgotten?" Hyun-woo leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "Great. So basically we have two options. Be good little humans and play nice, or screw everything up and get erased from existence. No pressure, right?" Jeho shot him a sharp look. "This isn't a joke. Hyun-woo, what we decide next could shape the future of our entire species. We can't afford to mess this up." Hyun-woo sighed, dropping his hands to his lap. I know. It's just, how do we even make that kind of decision? We're not exactly qualified to decide the fate of humanity. No one is," Jeho admitted, "but we're here. That means something. Maybe we were brought here for a reason. To see what happens when ambition goes too far, to understand why boundaries exist. And now we have to decide whether humanity is ready for this kind of knowledge." The weight of his words settled over the group, pressing down on their shoulders. Each of them knew the stakes. If they chose poorly, the consequences wouldn't just affect them. It would ripple outward, touching every corner of human civilization. Yet turning back felt impossible. They had come too far, seen too much, to simply walk away without answers. "We need more information," Jiun said finally, breaking the tension. Her voice was calm but determined. "If we're going to make an informed choice, we need to understand exactly what happened to those other civilizations. Why they failed, how they ended up here." Jeho nodded. "Agreed. Let's keep exploring. There has to be something in the zone that can give us clarity." With renewed purpose, the crew refocused their efforts. They charted a course deeper into the forbidden expanse, navigating cautiously among the glowing echoes of the past. As they moved, the ship's sensors picked up faint signals emanating from certain structures, data streams buried within the remnants of collapsed worlds. Jiun worked tirelessly to decode these fragments, piecing together snippets of history that painted a clearer picture of the civilizations trapped in limbo. One particular signal stood out, a strong, pulsating transmission coming from a massive construct shaped like a pyramid. Its surface shimmered with intricate patterns, shifting constantly like waves on water. Unlike the other echoes, this structure seemed active, almost alive. "That's unusual," Yoon Suk observed, studying the readings on his console. "Everything else out here is static, just memories frozen in time. But this, it's different. Maybe it's some kind of archive," Jiun suggested. "A repository of knowledge left behind by whoever built this place. Or a trap," Hyun-woo muttered under his breath. "Let's not forget where we are." Ignoring his skepticism, Jeho guided the Aurora closer to the pyramid. As they approached, the construct emitted a soft hum that resonated through the ship's hull, vibrating deep within their chests. Symbols along its surface began to glow brighter, rearranging themselves into a complex pattern that pulsed rhythmically. "It wants us to go inside," Jeho said, interpreting the invitation. He turned to his crew. "Are we ready for this?" No one answered immediately. The air aboard the ship grew thick with anticipation and fear. Finally, June spoke up. "We've come this far. We can't stop now." Taking a deep breath, Jeho gave command. "Prepare for docking." Inside the pyramid, the atmosphere was unlike anything they'd experienced before. The walls were smooth and reflective, casting distorted images of themselves back at them as they walked. Strange symbols floated in midair, glowing softly as if inviting interaction. The hum that had accompanied them since entering the Forbidden Zone grew louder here, almost deafening. "This feels wrong," Hyunwoo whispered, clutching his flashlight tightly. His nervous energy was palpable, infecting the others despite their determination to stay focused. "Stay close," Jeho instructed, leading the way cautiously. "And don't touch anything unless I say so." They moved deeper into the structure, following a corridor that spiraled upward like the threads of a screw. At the center of the pyramid, they found a chamber filled with floating orbs of light. Each orb contained fragments of data, images, sounds, text, all swirling chaotically within their confines. "These must be records," June said, stepping closer to examine one of the orbs. She reached out tentatively, her fingers brushing against its surface. Instantly, the orb flared brightly, projecting a holographic image into the air. The scene depicted a thriving civilization, a bustling cityscape filled with towering buildings and advanced technology. People moved about their daily lives, smiling and laughing, oblivious of the danger lurking just beyond their understanding. Then, abruptly, the image shifted. The skies darkened, the ground cracked open, and chaos erupted. Buildings crumbled, fires raged, and screams echoed through the chamber. "They pushed too far," June murmured, tears welling in her eyes. "They unlocked secrets they weren't ready for, secrets that destroyed them." One by one, the orbs activated, showing similar stories of hubris and downfall. Civilizations rose to incredible heights only to collapse under the weight of their own ambitions. Each tale was unique yet carried the same underlying theme. The pursuit of ultimate power came at a cost no one could afford. As they absorbed the lessons contained within the orbs, a realization dawned on them. The Forbidden Zone wasn't just a prison, it was a teacher. A place designed to show those who enter the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of humility. Humanity wasn't excluded because it was unworthy. It was protected until it could prove itself capable of handling such knowledge responsibly. "We have to tell Earth about this," Yoon Suk said suddenly, his voice trembling with urgency. "They need to know what's out here. What could happen if we're not careful?" "No," Jeho replied firmly, shaking his head. "Not yet. If we share this information now, people will panic. Governments will fight over it. Corporations will exploit it. We can't risk triggering the same cycle of destruction we've been warned about. Then what do we do?" June asked, frustration creeping into her tone. "Just sit on this knowledge forever?" "No," Joe said again, his expression resolute. "We document everything, every echo, every lesson, every warning. But we encrypt it, hide it somewhere safe, where it can only be accessed when humanity is ready." The idea sparked a glimmer of hope in the group. It wasn't perfect, but it was a compromise, a way to preserve the knowledge without unleashing its potential dangers prematurely. "That's risky," Hyunwoo pointed out. "What if someone finds it anyway? Or cracks the encryption?" "It's a risk we'll have to take," Jeho admitted. "But it's better than doing nothing or worse, rushing in blindly." With a plan in place, the crew set to work. They gathered all the data they had collected during their journey, compiling it into a single encrypted file. Using the pyramid's advanced technology, they embedded the file into the ship's systems, ensuring it would remain hidden until specific conditions were met, conditions tied to humanity's progress and unity. When the task was complete, they stepped back, exhaustion and relief washing over them in equal measure. They had done everything they could. Now it was up to humanity to prove itself worthy. As they prepared to leave the pyramid, The hum around them intensified, growing louder and louder until it became almost unbearable. Then, without warning, the sound stopped. The chamber fell silent, and the glowing symbols along the walls dimmed, fading into darkness. "I think we're done here," Jeho said quietly, turning toward the exit. Behind them, the pyramid began to dissolve, its shimmering surface breaking apart like sand carried away by wind. By the time they returned to the Aurora, there was no trace of it left. The crew climbed aboard the ship, their hearts heavy but hopeful. They had faced the unknown and emerged stronger for it. Whatever lay ahead, they knew they had made the right choice. For now, the Aurora drifted silently through Forbidden Zone, its systems humming softly as the crew prepared for their final departure. The encrypted file containing all they had learned was safely embedded within the ship's core, hidden behind layers of security, designed to ensure it would only be accessed when humanity was ready. It was a fragile hope, but it was all they had. For now, their mission was complete. Jeho stood in the cockpit, staring out at the swirling expanse of stars and glowing echoes around them. His hands rested lightly on the controls, fingers tapping out a nervous rhythm. The decision to leave had been unanimous, but that didn't make it any easier. Every fiber of his being wanted to stay, to explore further, to uncover more secrets, but he knew they couldn't risk pushing their luck. They had already crossed boundaries no human should have dared to cross. Staying longer might mean never leaving at all. Behind him, Yoon Suk adjusted the navigation console, plotting a course back toward the Veil. His movements were slow and deliberate, weighed down by the gravity of what they were about to do. Jiun sat nearby, her earpiece dangling loosely around her neck as she monitored the communication systems. She hadn't heard the strange voices since their encounter with the crystalline entity, but she kept listening anyway, just in case. Hyunwoo remained in the engine room below, double-checking every system to ensure the ship was in peak condition for the journey home. "We're ready," Yoon Suk announced finally, turning to face Jae-ho. "Coordinates are set. We can leave whenever you're ready." Jae-ho nodded, though he hesitated for a moment before giving the command. He glanced over his shoulder at June. "Anything unusual?" She shook her head. "Just silence. Whatever's out here, it's letting us go." That fact alone filled them all with unease. After everything they'd experienced, the Keepers, the trial of reflections, the crystalline entity, it felt almost too easy. Were they truly free to leave? Or was this another test? "Let's not waste time thinking about it," Jae-ho said firmly, shaking off his doubts. "Engage, thrusters. Take us home." The ship shuddered slightly as it began to move, accelerating toward the distant shimmer of the Veil. As they drew closer, the air aboard the Aurora seemed to grow heavier, charged with energy that prickled against their skin. The barrier pulsed faintly, almost imperceptibly, like a living thing waiting to swallow them whole. "This feels wrong," Hyunwoo muttered from the engine room, his voice crackling over the intercom. "It's like we're walking into a trap." "It's our only way out," Jae-ho replied, his tone steady despite the knot tightening in his stomach. "Keep your focus. We'll get through this." As the Aurora approached the Veil, the chaos they had first encountered upon entering returned with vengeance. Lights flickered wildly throughout the cabin. Instruments malfunctioned, spitting out erratic readings. A low, eerie hum filled the air, vibrating deep within their chests. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting into shapes that looked almost human before dissolving into nothingness. Time itself felt warped again. Seconds stretched into minutes, then snapped back into fleeting instants. For a brief moment, everyone aboard felt the same overwhelming sense of loss and longing they had experienced during the trial of reflections. Memories of loved ones, regrets, fears, all rushed to surface, threatening to overwhelm them. "Stay focused," Jae-ho shouted, gripping the controls tightly as the ship shuddered violently. "We're almost there." Then, just as suddenly as it began, the chaos subsided. The lights stabilized. The humming ceased, and the Aurora emerged on the other side of the Veil, surrounded once more by familiar constellations. For a long moment, no one spoke. They stared at the view screen, taking in the comforting sight of stars they recognized. They were home, or at least Close enough to call it that. But something felt off. Why does it feel like nothing happened? Ji-yoon asked softly, breaking the silence. Her voice carried a note of unease that mirrored everyone else's thoughts. Yoon-suk frowned, studying the navigation logs. According to the systems, we never left. There's no record of crossing the veil or entering the Forbidden Zone. It's like none of it ever happened. Hyun-woo climbed up from the engine room, his face pale. Guys, I think there's a problem, he said grimly. I've been running diagnostics on the core systems. Everything checks out fine, but the encrypted file is gone. What do you mean, gone? Jae-ho demanded, turning sharply to face him. I mean it's not there, Hyun-woo replied, holding up his hands defensively. It's like it never existed. All our data, everything we collected, it's disappeared. Panic rippled through the group, but Jae-ho quickly stepped in to calm them. No, it hasn't disappeared, he said firmly. It's still here. Somewhere. The encryption must have activated automatically once we cross a veil. That means the knowledge is safe. It's just hidden until the right conditions are met. His words did little to ease their anxiety, but they accepted his explanation. What choice did they have? They had done everything they could. Now, all they could do was trust that their actions would bear fruit someday. Days passed as they made their way back to Earth. The journey was uneventful compared to what they had endured in the Forbidden Zone, but the weight of their experiences lingered heavily in the air. None of them spoke much, each lost in their own reflections. They had seen things no human was meant to see, faced truths that challenged their understanding of existence itself. And yet, they had survived, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. When they finally reached Earth's orbit, they expected fanfare, a hero's welcome for completing such a daring mission. Instead, they found confusion. Ground control couldn't confirm their arrival. No record showed the Aurora having launched from Earth in the first place. To the rest of humanity, it was as if the ship and its crew had vanished without a trace. They don't remember us, Ji-yoon whispered, clutching the edge of her seat as they listened to ground control's baffled responses. It's like we don't exist. Jae-ho clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm. It's okay, he said, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. We knew this might happen. Crossing the veil, it changes things. Maybe not for us, but for everyone else. So what do we do now? Yoon-suk asked, his voice hollow. We live, Jae-ho replied simply. We carry what we've learned, not just the knowledge, but the lessons. Humility, restraint, responsibility. If we can embody those values, maybe someday humanity will be ready to inherit the stars. The crew exchanged solemn glances, understanding the weight of his words. Their journey had changed them irrevocably, but it wasn't over. Though the galaxy may have forgotten their existence, they remembered, and that was enough. As the Aurora descended toward Earth, its hull glowing faintly against the planet's blue-green horizon, the crew braced themselves for whatever lay ahead. They had faced the unknown and emerged stronger for it. Now, they would continue to push forward, not recklessly, but wisely. Humanity's future depended on it. And somewhere deep within the ship's encrypted systems, a fragment of ancient wisdom waited patiently for the day when humanity proved itself ready to join the cosmos. Until then, the crew of the Aurora would remain silent guardians, carrying the burden of knowledge in the hope of a brighter tomorrow.